The Crusades were a series of religious wars fought between Christians and Muslims in the Middle Ages. These wars were fought over control of the Holy Land, which was considered sacred by both religions. But the Crusades were more than just religious wars. They were also a time of cultural exchange between East and West. In this video, we will explore the history of the Crusades and their impact on the world. The Crusades began in the late 11th century, when Pope Urban II called for a holy war to retake Jerusalem from the Muslims. The first crusade was launched in 1096, and over the next 2 centuries, there were several more crusades. These wars had a profound impact on the world, both in terms of religion and culture. In this video, we will explore the causes and consequences of the Crusades, as well as the cultural exchange that took place between Christians and Muslims during this time. We will also examine the legacy of the Crusades and their impact in the modern world. Join us as we journey back in time to the era of the Crusades, a time of holy wars and cultural exchange. The Crusades were driven by a complex set of factors, including religion, politics, and economics. One of the main causes of the Crusades was the desire of European Christians to retake the Holy Land from the Muslims. Jerusalem was considered the holiest city in Christianity, as it was the site of Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. But in the 7th century, it was conquered by Muslim armies and became part of the Islamic Empire. For centuries, Christians were allowed to visit Jerusalem as pilgrims, but they were not allowed to live there. This changed in the 11th century when the Seljuk Turks, a Muslim dynasty, took control of Jerusalem and began to persecute Christian pilgrims. This persecution sparked outrage in Europe, and Pope Urban II saw an opportunity to unite Christians against a common enemy. In 1095, he called for a holy war to retake Jerusalem from the Muslims. The call to arms was met with enthusiasm by many Europeans, who saw it as a chance to earn salvation and glory in battle. But the Crusades were not just a religious war. They were also a way for European rulers to expand their power and influence. Many European rulers saw the Crusades as a way to gain new territories and resources, as well as to divert attention from domestic problems. The Crusades also provided economic opportunities for merchants and craftsmen, who supplied the armies with weapons, food, and other goods. In the next segment, we will explore the First Crusade and its impact on the Holy Land. The First Crusade was launched in 1096, with the goal of retaking Jerusalem from the Muslims. The Crusaders were led by several European nobles, including Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto. The Crusaders faced many challenges on their journey to the Holy Land, including harsh weather, disease, and attacks by Muslim armies. But they were determined to reach Jerusalem and reclaim it for Christianity. In 1099, after a long and bloody siege, the Crusaders finally captured Jerusalem. The city was sacked and many of its inhabitants were killed, including Muslims, Jews, and Christians. The capture of Jerusalem was a major victory for the Crusaders, but it also marked the beginning of a long and brutal conflict between Christians and Muslims in the Holy Land. Over the next several decades, there were several more crusades, each with its own goals and outcomes. Some crusades were successful in capturing territory and establishing Christian kingdoms in the Holy Land, while others were disastrous failures. The Crusades had a profound impact on the Holy Land, as well as on Europe and the Muslim world. They led to the establishment of new trade routes, the spread of new ideas and technologies, and the exchange of cultures and languages. But the Crusades also had a darker side, as they were marked by violence, intolerance, and religious fanaticism. They left a legacy of mistrust and hostility between Christians and Muslims that still exists today. In the next segment, we will explore the cultural exchange that took place during the Crusades, and how it influenced the development of Western civilization. The Crusades were not just a series of religious wars. They were also a time of cultural exchange between Christians and Muslims. During the Crusades, Europeans were exposed to new ideas, technologies, and cultures that had a profound impact on the development of Western civilization. One of the most significant cultural exchanges during the Crusades was the introduction of Arabic learning to Europe. Muslim scholars had preserved and expanded upon the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans, and this knowledge was transmitted to Europe through translations of Arabic texts. European scholars were particularly interested in the fields of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, which had advanced significantly in the Muslim world. The works of Muslim scholars such as Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Farabi, and Ibn Sina were translated into Latin and became the basis for European scholarship in these fields. The Crusades also brought new technologies and products to Europe, such as spices, textiles, and paper. These goods were traded along the new trade routes that were established during the Crusades, and they had a significant impact on the European economy. The Crusades also had an impact on European art and architecture. European artists and architects were inspired by the exotic styles and motifs of the Middle East, and they incorporated these elements into their own work. The cultural exchange that took place during the Crusades had a lasting impact on the development of Western civilization. It helped to lay the foundation for the Renaissance, which was a period of great cultural and intellectual growth in Europe. But the Crusades also had a darker side, as they were marked by violence, intolerance, and religious fanaticism. The legacy of the Crusades is a reminder of the importance of cultural exchange and understanding, and the dangers of intolerance and hatred. In the final segment, we will explore the legacy of the Crusades and their impact on the modern world. The Crusades were a defining moment in the history of the world. They had a profound impact on the Holy Land, Europe, and the Muslim world, and their legacy can still be felt today. One of the most significant legacies of the Crusades is the ongoing conflict between Christians and Muslims in the Middle East. The Crusade left a legacy of mistrust and hostility between these two religions, which has contributed to many of the conflicts and tensions in the region today. The Crusades also had a lasting impact on the development of Western civilization. They helped to lay the foundation for the Renaissance, which was a period of great cultural and intellectual growth in Europe. The Crusades also had an impact on the development of Western political and social institutions. They contributed to the growth of the nation-state, the development of international law, and the emergence of a more secular worldview. But the legacy of the Crusades is not just a positive one. The Crusades were marked by violence, intolerance, and religious fanaticism, and they left a legacy of mistrust and hostility between Christians and Muslims that still exists today. The legacy of the Crusades is a reminder of the importance of cultural exchange and understanding, and the dangers of intolerance and hatred. It is a reminder that we must work to build bridges between different cultures and religions, and to promote peace and understanding in the world. The Crusades were a complex and multifaceted event, and their legacy is still being debated and discussed today. But one thing is clear: the Crusades were a defining moment in the history of the world, and their impact can still be felt today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of the Crusades, a time of holy wars and cultural exchange.